How's it going, everybody? Welcome to RacerXOnline.com. I'm Kris Keefer, and we are at Fox Raceway today to talk about the 2025 Honda CRF250R. That is all new. That is an important phrase, all new, because we'll take a step back. I've been quite hard on the Honda products the last couple years because, quite honestly, the rideability of the machines have been a little bit harsh, hard to ride, and just not as comfortable. So now, you're looking at a brand new CRF250R that has quite a bit of updates. And we'll just start from the top here. The most important to me as I look over the sheet is the frame rigidity. The frame rigidity has gone up, and some of you guys might be out there thinking, oh man, that's not a good thing because you're saying it's harsh. So now they're going up in rigidity. But if you take a step back and you look at Trey Kennard and all of the Honda videos that they produced so far this year about the 2025 motorcycles, you will find out that the Honda frame is actually, or was, one of the softest frames out there today. And sometimes when you have a softer feeling frame, that could contribute to some harshness on the track because you're loading, binding the frame, and then it snaps back and the rider feels harshness. So now, from this sheet, we are looking at a 70% new frame, and the things that I've noticed on here is an 8% increase in torsional rigidity, a 5% increase in torsional lateral rigidity, which is to me the most important, and a 4% torsional rigidity in vertical stance. So for me, that is very important for the overall comfort of the motorcycle. So we're going to talk about that today and what that does on the track, as well as ride the older bike, to kind of give you a feel of what it's like to get a 2025 motorcycle if you're in the market to buy one. Not to be outdone, we have a new airbox, new suspension, we have new ECU maps, we have a new muffler. So this whole thing from top to bottom is brand new, and I'm looking forward to riding it. I brought Jax Pascal with me today to ride it, as well as give you some feedback on if this new Honda is for you. So stay tuned, we'll be right back, and we're going to break it all down for you here. All right, guys, wrapped up here. Jax Pascal here to the left of me, and we're wrapped up at Fox Raceway 2025 Honda CRF250R. Look, I want to start this review by saying, look, I am not oblivious to the fact that you will see that the track is smooth, it was prepped nice for us, so I don't want to give this glowing review and then eat my words 6 months down the road when I'm at rougher tracks or I go back east and ride. So I'm going to just give you the experience that I have. And I had a lot of experience with this bike beforehand, and then actually on the 2024 today, I rode that back to back. We both did that just to get a feel of what it's like. So I don't want to be like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, go buy one right now. But I will say this, and I think Jackson can attest to this, it is a lot better than 2024. When you go back to back on these things, there's a few things that stand out that we'll talk about, but for me, it's a lot better of a Honda, more power, the chassis feels better, more planning. So when the track gets rough, can't really talk about that yet because the track was not rough today, but I've had enough time here at Paula. He rides here a lot, so for us right now to talk to you guys, to give you some feedback, this is just what we felt today and our initial impressions, so stay tuned for more later on RacerXOnline.com. So, all right, I'll start here at the engine first, Jackson. Like I said, 24, we rode that earlier, hopped back and forth. there's just more low end to mid-range hit with this bike right now. So if you're hopping on from an older Honda, you're getting on this, you're gonna have more low end RPM response, more bottom end, better mid-range, and a usable third gear. Last year, you couldn't even use third gear on the 24 CRF250R because it just wasn't usable. So Jax, you ride a Honda, that's what you race, so give us some feedback on what you think.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing about like the bottom to mid range of this bike is how usable it is, especially coming out of the corners. I think all of you guys that have rode a Honda 250 in 2024 and 2023, you guys understand that when you come out of the turns and you exit, it's really hard to find that where the most power is because you're either wrapping out of second gear or you don't have enough to get into the RPMs in fourth gear. This third gear is amazing and it tracks really, really well through the turn, even in third gear, and you can run one gear through the turn rather than having to decide if you want to bog in third gear until you get out of the turn or if you want to just let the bike sing in second gear. So third gear is very, very usable, and I think that's the most exciting thing about the mid to bottom range here in this bike.
Yeah, so when it comes to the engine, guys, the intake is a little bit different. It's a redesigned airbox. There's a straighter airflow getting into the intake now, so that is one thing. I talked to some of the Honda R&D guys here today. The crank itself has been redesigned, and it has increased in rigidity. So there is less flexing when higher RPMs. You're wrapping it out in second and third gear. So for me, the pickup is a lot better. Jackson said it, perfect. Third gear is more usable. I can use it and use the bike in third gear more in corners than I can in the 24. So with all that being said, what we call in the testing world is called recovery. The recovery of this bike is just better. And the window is a little bit longer for me to use versus last year's bike where the window was a little bit shorter. I had to be more precise with my shifts. I don't have to be as precise with this engine. So the engineers were telling us today that a lot of that newfound power comes from that crank, that increased rigidity, which is amazing to me because I'm not an engineer. But you think about that crank and that rotation and how fast it's going, there is some flex. So if they increase that rigidity, it's not flexing as much and you're just getting more connection, more power from the crank, which obviously is a better thing, as well as drawing more air, a straighter shot, and you're getting more pickup. I will say top end doesn't feel much different from last year's bike, but where you're going to notice it is just low to mid-range, and I think you can concur.
Yeah, for sure, and that definitely doesn't mean the top end's bad. I think the top end of last year's bike was really good. I think we just gained some from the mid to bottom, and the top end just stays the same, and I'm excited about that. I think the motor's just better overall.
Yeah, I agree. A little bit more torque, a little bit easier to use. So for me, that is a better thing, is trying to catch up to the Yamaha and that torque. So I think Honda did a good job there. Also, I want to note that the muffler has changed. It's a little bit different, shaped different. And the exhaust note, if you guys are stock muffler users, sounds way better. I hopped on the 24 earlier, and it seems raspy, and our 24 Honda CRF250R didn't have that much time on it, and this bike sounds a lot beefier and throaty. So I don't know, you don't ride a stock pipe that much, but...
Not very often, but when I do, I definitely know what the stock muffler sounds like, and this thing actually sounds really, really good, especially with a stock bike. Like when I started up the first time, I was like, ooh, it kind of gives you those jitters, like, oh, you're actually like really excited to ride this bike. It sounds really good.
Yeah, it sounds more racy. So let's talk about the most important thing to me was the chassis. Facts are facts. It felt harsh. I come out here 1 o'clock on a Friday, hacked out, dry. Chassis feels rigid, harsh. I can't place my wheels into a shallow rut. We're not blessed with great ruts like you guys are on the East Coast. We have shallow ruts here, but if we're talking about ruts on the Southern California soil, Fox Raceway has probably the best ones besides Paris. We don't have that many tracks with a lot of ruts, and it just was tough to ride this bike in those conditions. It just felt skatey, deflection, and I just didn't have a lot of confidence in the chassis. So again, not to give this thing a glowing review, but that portion of the bike is better. We don't have those conditions out here today, but I can tell you one thing. I felt less vibration from this new chassis. I felt less pitching from this new chassis. And if you're a Honda owner, you already know how good this thing corners. But for me, I have way more positivity into the corner. I don't have as much oversteer with this suspension and chassis setup like I did last year, and it just has an overall better ride attitude and balance than ever before. So I'm looking forward to riding this on rougher tracks to see what this chassis can do. But for me, to start out with, is just much better.
Yeah, and I think the way I would kind of describe it is the difference in the feeling. Like, obviously the track was really flat today, but the difference is 2024, I would be a little worried to ride it in a rough track, just knowing how skatey it is and knowing how I can't predict what the front end is doing. Riding this bike with this new chassis, I'm excited to ride it on a rough track because I have an amazing feeling on it, and I just want to see more of what it can do because it feels like there's way less limitations on the front end specifically and really throughout the whole bike. And so, you know, when I would push the limit and gain more speed, I felt like I was being rewarded for what I was doing with the balance of the bike and everything. So I like when I pulled off after I did like a somewhat fast moto, I told the guys, I was like, I'm excited to go East Coast on this bike because I think it's going to be even better.
Just overall chassis feeling for me is just a lot flatter feeling. Hopping back and forth from the older bike, I got a lot of pitching on the 24. It's stock suspension on our 24, coming from stock suspension on the 25. I just feel like the overall chassis is better balanced and can get in the corner in an easier manner. So one thing that the Honda does well, especially this new chassis, is tracking inside of a rut. Once you're inside of a rut, it follows that rut and that line so easy. On the older bike, I could get in really easy, but then I would feel low in the front end, and then I would have some oversteer in area 2, and then it would screw up my area 3. This bike didn't do that. Going back and forth lap to lap, much easier to get in and get out of the corner. Here today, we call these media lines because all of us, we're not super fast riders, so we get in and there's always this area 2 to area 3, there's this acceleration point where you get a hole, and this 25 chassis shines in that area. When there's an imperfection in the rut or there's an acceleration hole mid-rut, the chassis is way flatter and easier to go through that portion than the 24.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest way for me to describe like the different 2 area 3s that this bike handled in, if there was that hook and you could straighten your bike out quickly, this thing was amazing. And I think when you can get the bike straight, because it's a Honda, right? It's going to turn amazing no matter what. And then this one even turns better than last year. So as soon as you can get the bike straight out of your turn, everything's perfect. The only time I struggled with it was when area 3 was extended and the rut kind of faded out, but you still had to stay in the line. I got a little bit of oversteer just because the bike wanted to turn really, really well. So it was almost wanting to turn too good. So I couldn't let the bike float as much as I could maybe on last year's bike or even like a 450 where it's got the power to push itself out. So that was literally the only time I ever struggled in a turn. And there was only one turn here that was like that. Anything else, it was amazing in a berm, and it was amazing with any sort of like hook or imperfection in the rut.
Yeah, so look, it's a Honda at corners, but for me, I want more stability, and we think, I'm not going to say yes for sure right now, but from what we felt going back and forth, I assume that, or think, that this chassis is going to be a little bit better on straight line stability. It already feels better when you're lean angle, on throttle, cutting across the track. I can feel that here right away, not an issue. So when I get somewhere that's rougher, we're going to dissect that more. But for right now, the increased rigidity of this chassis is much more compliant, and I have more tire contact feel as I cut across the track. So that is a plus. So we'll dissect that more as we go, but as of right now, so far so good. Suspension. Some of you guys might get scared. Rear shock spring is a 5.0 rear shock spring, which is extremely soft sounding. And then you have a 4.8 fork spring. So 4.8 is nice in the fork. Some companies go to a 5.0. I think that's too stiff on a 250. A 5.0 is extremely soft. I know that the older Honda had a 5.2. So Showa and Honda went to work, and they created a different valving stack in the shock, which also lightened the rear spring. I was scared. I was like, oh, it's going to be soft. But honestly, here today, landing off the jumps, casing some things, not a really violent, harsh bottoming feel. Last year's bike, I'm loading the rear spring or loading the shock, and there's like a hollow or an empty spot at the and near the end of the stroke, which just kind of bam, and it just bottoms out really quick. This shock does not do that, so that is a plus. But overall, again, I can't really comment on how it does with a rough track. We'll see that later, but just getting on the bike right now, it's balanced, doesn't pitch as much. There's more dampening feel in the fork. We did drop the fork to 2 millimeters from 5. We're running about 102, 103 millimeters of sag. For me, Jax was about 105 millimeters. And I went in slower on the rebound on the shock just to kind of calm it down, and went in 2 on the compression on the fork just to give me a little bit more feel diving in some of those holes that we're talking about here in Fox Raceway today. So, Jax, you're 170 pounds. You're 6 foot, 8 foot 10. So tell us about the suspension for you.
Yeah, so I'm 6'5". There's a lot of
6'5".
6'5". Yeah, so there's a lot of leverage on me, right? So like I'm 170, but there's a lot of weight moving when I ride the bike. And I was super impressed. Like it's really hard to get a set of suspension set up for me because I go really, really stiff, especially on a race set.
You got so much weight transfer, right?
Yeah,
on and off throttle.
That's right. So like, what I race on would be something that maybe like a 250-pound B rider would ride. So yeah, I go really stiff, and even with the soft springs on this, I could go fast and I could push the limits of the bike, and it was exciting, and I wasn't scared. I didn't have any nervous moments. And
what about the 24? When you rode the 24, was there a lot more? Did it go deeper in the stroke?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the difference between the 24 and the 25 is like what you were saying, that kind of hollow feeling when you start getting to the bottom of the movement and the fork and the shock. You kind of lose that feeling and you get a little scared because you don't know what the bike's actually going to do.
A little dampening feeling, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't know what the bike's going to do. This 25, I never lost confidence in the bike through any turn, and I kind of tried to hit every turn a little different every time I went out. I tried to push it in really deep into the turn. Sometimes I'd let up and get on the gas earlier. And I think the biggest thing with this bike is it limits how much your mistakes affect you. So when you make a mistake, on the 2024, it'd be a big deal because the bike reacts really a lot.
You know what we call that in the testing world?
Let's hear it, Kris.
It's called track toughness. So companies work on their track toughness of their motorcycles. So if we take this bike from Fox Raceway to Glen Helen to Monster Mountain, Alabama, is our settings close enough that we can adjust to make us feel comfortable? I feel like this has better direction than 25.
Yeah, I think so, and that's kind of what I was starting with too, right? Like I'm excited to go East Coast on this bike because I think it'll always work really good.
So that's our initial impression. Ergonomics, look, I'm not 8'10". I'm 5'11", and I don't get hung up on anything. That feels pretty seamless to me. One thing I can complain about, look, it's not all cotton candy and roses here, right? So I don't like the seat. It hurts my, Simon, to complete this out, it hurts my I ride a lot, so I feel like I got a good enough to ride a long time, but for whatever reason, I hit the subframe rails on this. If I'm on the edge of the seat, it just hurts. Overall ergonomics, you're not going to beat a Honda, guys. I'm 5'11", I get on it, I'm adjusted. I had Jordan Truxell here today to help us adjust stuff. It was easy peasy. I feel home right away. I ride a Yamaha and a Kawasaki a lot. This is so much better than any one of those bikes just because I can move around, I can stand up. The transition from seating to standing is easy. But for me, I like it. Jax, all 9 foot of you, what do you think?
Yeah, I love the cockpit. I think it's even more open than last year's bike, especially the line from the foot pegs to the bars, especially where my knees go. My knees move a lot, and everything felt really good there. The only thing I would complain about is there's a little bit of a hole in the shroud here where the radiators come out in the back. If your legs are 6 feet long like my legs, your knees might just kind of come up there and hit that hole, but it doesn't catch on anything. You just feel your knee hit the hole, and it might stop a little bit of movement, but it didn't move my body. I just felt it. So that would be the only thing where it's not absolutely perfect, but it's definitely not the end of the
Seat
world.
bother you at all?
I didn't notice the seat.
Maybe it's just me getting old and I can't handle it, but that's my deal. A couple other tidbits here before we wrap it up, because Simon doesn't like 50-minute videos. So they went to work on the front brake as well. They had a different piston change on the Nissan front caliper here, so that is also different. I'm a big Brembo guy. I love Brembo brakes, but this Nissan system on the Honda is excellent. I know a lot of you Yamaha guys go to a Nissan Honda Master just to put on your Yamahas, but strong front brake. I like the lever feel. The clutch, we haven't got confirmation that the clutch has been changed. We're trying to search that out, but the clutch feels a little bit more positive from our 24. Granted, maybe it's because of less slipping because it's new, but that also felt better. And I love the lever shape of the Honda. It feels nice. I like that stock lever shape. I'm not a fan of the grips, but whatever. That's nitpicking. Brakes, throttle, anything?
Yeah, I actually felt really good with the front brake. I did like a couple brake tests like coming into the turns just to see like how fast I could possibly slow down. The front brake was really, really good, but it still kept the bike balanced even with the heavy braking up front. And then I love the clutch. I was like blown away that they didn't change the clutch because I actually have never felt a Honda clutch feel that good.
Yeah. It is a 9-plate, so, and forgive me, I may not know, and I'll admit this, I don't know if last year's was a 9-plate. It could have been, but it just feels like it's a little bit more positive.
Yeah, no, I mean.
And you mind if it's a cable?
I don't care. I'm good with a hydraulic and a cable. Like I notice the difference, but I can ride them both well, so I don't really mind either.
The Works Edition will have a hydraulic clutch. This one has a cable clutch. I don't mind a cable. I prefer it, honestly, because I can feel it when it's going away. I can adjust it. I don't mind that. On the hydraulic side, if you're a clutch abuser like myself, you don't know when it's going away. So for me, cable is fine. Works Edition, we will not have that motorcycle until September. So for those of you going to comment on the YouTube channel right now, just calm down. September, that will happen. Anything else that you want to mention that you dislike besides that? Anything you got for me?
No, that's everything I've got.
Are you excited to ride one?
I'm really, really excited to ride one, and I'm actually really excited to ride the 450 as well and the Works Edition. I think everything's just going to be a little bit better, and as we get to put new parts and everything on the bike, I think it's just going to get better and better. I'm excited.
All right, that's our initial impression. So stay tuned to racerxonline.com for more information, or you can go to my website, KeeferIncTesting.com. I'm going to have some more stuff up there. I got a podcast that's going to happen. We're going to talk about this bike, and as the months go on, we'll develop and we'll keep evaluating this thing and see if it gets better on rougher tracks. But right now, great job to the Honda guys for making a more comfortable Honda. That's all we want. I mean, you look at the bike, it makes you want to ride. Like, I want to ride a dirt bike when I look at a Honda. But then previously, I rode the Honda, and I'm like, I don't really want to ride it. It's just too harsh. But now I'm like, ooh, I want to ride a Honda. It kind of makes you want to ride red, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You're biased, though. You like Honda.
I mean, like, I obviously ride a Honda and race a Honda, but, like, there is something about looking at a Honda, and you're just like, oh, that's a true dirt bike right there. I mean, that I can go race. Yeah.
So good job to the Honda boys. Thank you for having us out here at Fox Raceway today. Don't forget, Kris at KeeferIncTesting.com. That's my email. That's a virtual door that you can kick right open, and I will answer your questions. We're here to help. That's what we do over here. And 12 issues, $30. Racer X's website. You just go subscribe to a magazine. You can read. He's young. I don't know if he still reads magazines.
No. I get every single month of Racer X, and it sits on our kitchen counter. And,
read it.
Oh yeah, we open it up and read it every day. Like, that's what we do. We sit and eat breakfast and read a little bit of Racer X.
I knew I hired this kid for a reason. He still reads magazines. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you on the next go around. Hopefully this gave you some information, and if you have any questions, hit me up. See you guys.